Hi everyone, welcome to a new video. I mentioned in the previous video that I did, oh, not the previous one, the one before that, where I did the red flags in Synastry. If you haven't seen that video and you're interested, go watch it. This is the opposite, looking at the green flags in Synastry and relationship astrology. So I am going to focus on Synastry for this video. If you don't know me, my name's Susan. I am a Western astrologer. I've got over 23 years experience studying astrology and over 12 years experience consulting professionally. And I kind of lost track of time. I started in consulting professionally in 2012. So I don't know how many years that is now. I've lost track. And I've looked at thousands of clients' charts over the years, and I've put together a list of some of the helpful, positive, harmonious, synastry aspects that you can have in relationship with somebody. Before I go ahead, I just want to say a little bit of a disclaimer. It's really important when you're looking at astrology, not to focus just on one aspect or one particular thing. Say you've got a chart that's got a lot of red flags in it and you've got one good thing, you've got to take things on balance. You've got to look at things in that way. And at the end of the day, we are drawn to who we are drawn to, regardless of the astrology. The astrology is there. Obviously, there are people that have no clue about the astrology and they don't know about understanding it. And so they're just drawn to who they're drawn to, right? So sometimes I think astrology, well, often it can come in handy if you know and can analyze things. And say you're experiencing, for example, a positive relationship and you look at the synastry between you and like, wow, I can see why this works and that works. It's there in the chart, or you can see why you may have challenges in certain areas. And that said, there is no chart that is all positive aspects or all harmonious. I don't think that exists. I would think that if there was, I mean, maybe it does exist. I'm sure it does. But the thing is, if there was a relationship chart that was all positive, I just think it would be very boring. And I don't think that, you know, there'd be enough glue there. So you do need some difficult aspects. You do need some squares and things like that to create a bit of tension because, you're working through issues together in relationships as well. Relationships that come together in a spiritual sense, it's not just about um, matching with somebody who you're perfectly compatible with in this really idealistic way, though obviously you need that energy as well, but it is about learning lessons on a soul level. That is the whole purpose why we come together in relationships with others, is to learn. And doesn't mean we should be suffering continuously in a relationship, no, but it's a complex. Relationships are very complex, let's just say. And there are life lessons and stages of life lessons. Some people go through a really difficult relationship and then end up with someone else where they have met an amazing person after that. So, just some thoughts and some points there. Okay, let's get into it though. So I'm going to list off a bunch of aspects. So, and I will go through each one in stages. So like I'll talk about Venus for a while, and then I'll talk about Saturn and Pluto and overlays and things like that. And also I'll just say these are not all of the aspects. These are just ones that I notice as positive and helpful over many, many years of looking at charts and doing, relationship astrology for clients as well. And also studying the charts of people that I know, even myself, with regards to relationships where I've had more harmonious, and also challenging, and looking at everything in between. So I'm going to get into it now. So let's start with Venus. Since Venus is the goddess of love, let's start with her. Venus aspects in synastry that are helpful. Venus trine Venus is very harmonious. So you're going to find that if you have Venus trine Venus, you relate to each other in a very similar way. You have a good understanding of each other. Doesn't mean that everything's perfect. It's just that overall you get each other especially in the way that you care about others, the way that you relate to love, how you see relationships is going to be harmonious with Venus trine Venus. Venus sextile Venus is similar, but in a sort of more subtle way. There can be a lot of common ground, but again, it doesn't mean that you understand each other on everything. It's just that there's some similarities in the way that you go about loving, in the way that you relate in relationships. There are some similarities. The sextile does require a bit of effort. The trine does as well, but when you do put that effort forward, it's very helpful. to the relationship and does bring harmony and a general sense of harmony. Venus conjunct Sun can be nice in relationships. It is something that I do see every now and then with married couples, the Venus conjunct Sun. It also depends, what sign Venus is in. So if Venus is in a sign that she's comfortable in, like Taurus, Libra, it's probably going to be a bit more harmonious than if she's in a detriment sign, or a fall sign, such as Aries in detriment or Virgo in fall. So, always factor in those things as well in when you're looking at these things. Venus trine Sun is harmonious, so can feel very supportive, like a very supportive relationship. Venus trine Mars shows chemistry and connection and a sense of harmony and flow, where it's not difficult. It's like you understand each other, you flow together harmoniously. So, yeah. And that can work very ideal in a more ideal way where with the Venus trine Mars, where the Mars is the masculine person or the masculine individual, and Venus is the more feminine. So the Mars person would take the lead. So if you're a very feminine person, very feminine individual, a very feminine woman, you can feel like if you feel that you have to take charge, that would feel uncomfortable in this scenario. But overall, harmonious. Mars sextile trine Sun is very sparky and shows a lot of, chemistry, attraction. Mars conjunct Sun as well is instant attraction, just immediately drawn to the other person. You just feel like quite a strong chemistry, but that one can be a little bit, it again depends on the Mars sign, combative. And, if the two people are both very strong individuals, like very dominant, can lead to power struggles. But overall, Mars conjunct Sun shows like an instant recognition of a relationship, of attraction, of feeling that way about somebody, with the chemistry and emotionally, and in a lot of ways it's a strong draw, a strong pull to each other. Mars in the fifth house, so when one person's Mars falls in the other person's fifth house, they both feel a strong attraction to each other on a physical, visceral, sexual, way. A lot of chemistry. It's kind of heart racing type energy. There can be a lot of nerves. I've seen this where when the couple first meet each other, unless they've got a lot of Venus that soften things down, or, other things that soften the energy down or calm the energy down, they can feel very on edge around each other because it's like, oh my God, I'm so attracted to this person. I don't even know what to do with myself. It can be that. It's like nerves can kick in, and fear of like, kind of touching the person because it's going to feel too sexual at first, until they sort of cross that boundary and go into, becoming closer physically. It could be a bit awkward at times because Mars just wants to get down to business in the fifth house. And so, yeah, that can be a bit challenging at first, but then it can be really good later. So it can be very hot in the intimacy sense, Mars in the fifth house. Venus conjunct Moon is a nice one. I don't know if I said that before when I was doing the Venus list. Sorry if I missed it. Especially if Venus is in Taurus or Libra, even Pisces. Yeah, it's very loving energy. You'll feel like when you're physically close to that person, it feels very comfortable and very natural. Okay, very comfortable and very natural with Venus and Moon. And also if you are in a relationship or live together, that can be harmonious, but then you got to look at other things. If you've got in your overlay one of the person's Mars in the fourth house, that's going to change that up and make that more difficult. But just looking at the individual aspects as an individual thing, that's why I say, for the purpose of this video and to understand astrology, if you're looking to understand the aspects, I'm listing them out, but you've always got to factor everything in. Okay. If Venus is in detriment or fall, so Venus in Scorpio with the moon in Scorpio, look, intimately, and when you're connected and you're close to that person, you could feel amazing. But when there's other things going on, like reality, and you have to deal with bills and, problems that come up in life, it can be more difficult. So when you're close, it can be amazing, but dealing with reality in the relationship, if the Venus and the moon are in fall or detriment, it can make it difficult, okay? More difficult. But for physical closeness, Venus Moon, not Mars Moon. For physical closeness, Venus Moon is very beautiful, very comfortable, very loving, very natural, and understanding of each other's needs emotionally and physically. Okay, so with Saturn, let's go to Saturn now. So Saturn sextile Venus is good. Anything with Saturn, you're always seeing that longevity aspect, the glue that keeps people together long term. Obviously, like the list that I have here, I'll just go through it anyway. I won't say too much anyway, we'll see how we go because there's a lot for me to get through in this video. Saturn sextile Venus is binding, but it requires effort, okay? Because a sextile is more of a gentle aspect. It does require effort, and if there's not another thing in the chart with Saturn, it could and say there's a lot of Uranus or there's other things. It could be something that doesn't necessarily hold the relationship together long term unless there are other things helping that, okay? Saturn sextile Mars, helpful in terms of working together day to day, getting things done together as a couple. The sense of responsibility together or working on joint projects together can be good. Sort of when in terms of being a couple where you kind of have each other complements each other and you work together well. That's the energy of that one. Saturn sextile Mars. Saturn sextile Mercury shows like a willingness to be responsible for each other in the relationship and move forward together. Saturn sextile Jupiter is an interesting one. It's very respectful energy with each other. Doesn't mean it's a perfect relationship by any means, but it's definitely where you don't want to. This is not a relationship where you would just go hell for leather and just be like saying everything that's top of your mind to the person, because you're very aware you don't want to hurt the other person's feelings. You're very aware of like what you say and how you are with the person, because there's a sense of respect there. Again, it doesn't mean it's perfect, but it helps in mitigating some harsher energies. So I like that one, Saturn sextile Jupiter. Saturn trine Venus is very binding, supportive, longevity in the connection. That's a good one. Saturn conjunct Venus, you do see that a lot with married couples. I see that one a lot, or couples where there's a long-term connection. Doesn't mean that the connection cannot break apart. Yes, absolutely it can. It's more of a karmic energy here with Saturn conjunct Venus, but I think overall it's a good one, especially if you have, Venus in Libra, or because Saturn's exalted in Libra and Venus is in home sign in Libra, so that would be a good placement for Saturn conjunct Venus. Possibly even Saturn in Capricorn with Venus in Capricorn, because you would feel very dedicated to the relationship and responsible about the relationship. And then it would give extra longevity to it. One that could be a bit more difficult, or a couple that might be a bit more difficult, would be Saturn in Aries with Venus in Aries. Why? Because Saturn is in fall in Aries and Venus is in detriment in Aries. You see how the signs make a huge difference here. Saturn in Cancer is detriment. Venus in Cancer is not anything negative at all, but just because if you had Saturn conjunct Venus and the Saturn was in Cancer, that could definitely make it a bit more on the challenging side. So there may be obstacles to overcome together, like more than if it was Saturn in Libra and Venus in Libra, for example. Saturn conjunct Juno can indicate like marriage, longevity, a long like lifetime connection, but there could be a lot of hard work in that one. So it could be a long friendship that ends up maybe one day with marriage, or a long connection that ends up with a commitment, or just that each other for your whole lifetime, or something like that, where you really hold that person in high esteem. Juno is the marriage asteroid. I do look at that because I have been following that. Generally with asteroids, there's not tons of research on them, so unlike the rest of astrology. So that's why with Juno, there's just a little bit more information, and I have been following Juno myself for many, many years with people's charts and clients and so forth. So it always factors in. I notice a strong Juno placement factors in with marriage a lot, like someone's Juno conjunct the other person's midheaven, or someone's Juno conjunct the other person's part of fortune, or their Juno conjuncts your moon or your ascendant. Those are very strong marriage indicators. Does that mean that the marriage is great? No, it just definitely not necessarily. It could just mean that the marriage is that you get married to that person. That there's a, especially with the asteroid Juno, it has to be within 0 to 1 degrees. Remember that, because when you're looking at asteroids, you don't have the orb, that kind of 3 to 5 degree orb that we use, 3 to 6, 3 to 7, depending if it's a conjunction. It's only 1 degree. So 0 to 1 has to be that tight an orb. Okay, and Saturn, back to Saturn. Saturn conjunct part of fortune. Okay, so Saturn conjunct part of fortune, you see that in married couples a lot too, but also in long-term relationships where the reality is that the couple experiences together is fortunate, because that is the nature of the part of fortune. Part of fortune is an Arabic part. It's a calculation. It's not, a planet, but it definitely is very significant. I've noticed it in a lot of charts as being prominent when it's conjunct a planet, especially conjunctions mostly. Okay, so that's Saturn. Look, I'm not going to mention every single aspect, but these are the ones that stand out. Pluto, sextile Sun, gives like a strong connection, as does Pluto trine Sun. Pluto trine Sun, you see that more where there's a long-term connection and a deep connection. Like, you might have a lot of understanding of each other on a deeper level. Whether you discuss it or not, there's an understanding there. Same with Pluto sextile Sun. Pluto sextile Mars is really good for chemistry. So intimacy and chemistry is very sparky. Pluto sextile Venus and Pluto trine Venus the same. Now, if you have one of these with somebody, but you don't have anything else that shows chemistry, like if you have Pluto sextile Venus, Pluto sextile Mars, even Pluto trine Venus, but you don't have any other indicators of chemistry, that in itself is not enough, just letting you know. So that's why I'm saying you have to look at multiple things that indicate chemistry, more than one indicator, at least three. So you're looking for at least three of, when you're looking for harmony, you want at least three harmonious aspects. When you're looking for longevity, at least two or three, three is like the key amount. So Uranus with Uranus sextile moon is good because it's not harsh energy and it just spices things up. There's a sense of being emotionally drawn to the person and excited by what they have to say next and what they're going to do next. And, it's like a feeling of not being easily bored, so there's an interest factor that can be ongoing. Same with Uranus sextile Venus and Uranus sextile Mars. If you have like Uranus trine Venus, it's still positive, but it can mean like you just want a little bit more space for yourself at times and you need to do your own thing in the relationship. I mean, that's always healthy anyway, regardless. But Uranus trine Venus, Uranus trine Mars, you'll want to have your own interests. You don't want to be like just enmeshed in the other person. I mean, again, that's never healthy anyway, to be codependent or enmeshed too much. To have your own interests and hobbies and friends when Uranus is involved, especially trines and conjunctions. Okay, so angles. When the angles are aligned, this is very powerful soul connection. Okay, so when I say the angles being aligned, the DC is lined up with the person's ascendant, like your descendant and their ascendant, or your midheaven and their IC, or their midheaven, your ascendant, or DC IC, anything like that, any of those combinations. And it doesn't have to be perfectly lined up, but they cross each other in some way when you look at it visually. That's a very deep connection and a past life connection, a deep soul connection, where it can be, you can feel like this person has a deep impact on your life, and definitely it can feel like you're reflecting things back to each other and there's a lot of learning going on. That's not that common to see, but when you do see it, it's a sign of a deep soul connection. Also, anything on the angles, so like Jupiter conjunct the descendant, Venus conjunct the descendant, or the ascendant, or the midheaven. So Jupiter on any of the angles. I see at the very bottom of the chart, the descendant point, which is the relationship angle, the midheaven, which is the career and the marriage line angle, sorry, and or the ascendant. Same with Venus. So Venus or Jupiter there on any of those is super significant. But again, if you just have that one thing and you don't have much else, you can't just hold that one aspect, to give it. But if you have multiple things going on, like Jupiter descendant and Venus on the IC, that's going to be quite strong, things like that. All right, let's look at Jupiter. So Jupiter is always very helpful and positive. Obviously, Jupiter also expands things and brings things into hyper focus. So, for example, if someone's Jupiter lands on your midheaven, they're going to enhance a focus on your career. And, if Jupiter's in a detriment sign, say Jupiter's in Capricorn and your midheaven's Capricorn, that person could pressure you to be more and do more in the world. So that's where Jupiter can sometimes feel different and not always as buoyant and happy. Jupiter rules Sagittarius, and it's also in its home sign in Pisces, but it's exalted in Cancer. So it's going to feel very different with a Jupiter in Capricorn, where it's Jupiter in Capricorn is in fall, not detriment. I can't remember what I said now. It's in fall. It's in the most difficult placement for Jupiter. So if a fall Jupiter of the other person's is on your midheaven, just as an example, that may not feel as good as Jupiter in Cancer on your midheaven, IC, or your descendant point, for example. So again, the signs do factor in. Remember that. So Jupiter IC is nice because you feel like the person has your back, okay? Especially if it's in any sign other than detriment or fall. If it's in any sign where Jupiter is on your IC, so that can feel like the person really supports you at a core fundamental level of who you are as a human being. Do they agree with everything that you do or say? No. No. But I actually have this with a couple of people. You may not agree with everything that person thinks or their philosophy on everything, but at the end of the day, that person supports you on a soul level, like who you are deep in your soul. Like there's a lot of forgiveness, a lot of love there. You can go through a lot and still care for the other person. You can, even if you're in a relationship, separate from that person and still be friends. You can still care about them. So it's a powerful one. Jupiter on the seventh house cusp, that's classic in marriage. So is Jupiter on the midheaven. Again, unless it's in Capricorn. I mean, look, Jupiter on the midheaven, it's an interesting one because Jupiter is fall, like I said, in Capricorn, but the midheaven is ruled by Saturn. So, it could be a relationship that starts out difficult and then improves over time if there are other things that help and soften the connection. So there's that. Sorry, just sipping my kombucha. um, excuse me. Jupiter ascendant, I've seen that in like long-term couples, married couples. Jupiter conjunct Juno within 0 to 1 degrees or maximum 2 degrees. Really, it's 0 to 1, but I've seen that in married couples. Jupiter conjunct part of fortune, very helpful to the relationship for both people, very lucky relationship, very blessed relationship. Also married couples. North Node Jupiter, I've seen that in married couples as well. And it's a very positive one. It shows that where the person is headed in their life, where they're growing, is aligned to the other person's goals and, how they want to expand in life, what they want to go forward towards. So that's really good. Jupiter in the fifth house is very nice. Can indicate also having children together. Again, like if Jupiter's in Cancer in the fifth house and it doesn't have any hard aspects in other ways, then that can be really positive for having a family together. If Jupiter's in a difficult sign and has hard aspects, you could still have children, but it might just be like a lot of work or more difficult for you in some ways. Jupiter in the first house, and I can't remember if I said Jupiter ascendant. I think I did. Jupiter descendant, those are all marriage indicators and very positive. So the Jupiter person is bringing a boost of positivity and growth and stimulation to the other person's life in a big way. Jupiter trine moon is really nice, also very forgiving. So you can go through a lot of ups and downs and still forgive the other person because there's just a fundamental love of the other. Usually the Jupiter person in the overlay in the synastry tends to be more the forgiving one overall. And Jupiter trine Venus is also really nice and very forgiving and very loving and harmonious. Jupiter also shows generosity of spirit. So the Jupiter person can help the other person. Jupiter conjunct Venus is really loving, very generous, can be a lot of fun, can be very buoyant, upbeat, happy, lots of laughs, really positive vibes together, like where you just really love and enjoy the other person's company, like it's really, really enjoyable energy. Jupiter in someone's Jupiter falling in the other person's second house can help the other person financially or bring a lot of abundance and security to the other person's life. Um, let's see. Anything with Jupiter, look, I don't want to say anything and everything because, like I said, if it's in detriment or fall, Jupiter, that's not going to be as easy. And it doesn't mean that the relationship is perfect by any means. It just shows that like there's a strong connection. Also, when you're looking at the green flags in synastry, you do want some conjunctions in the mix, at least a couple, because conjunctions are very binding as well. And, ideally you want something positive there. But even if it's not perfectly positive, a conjunction shows a strong bind, a strong feeling of connection, a strong pull, and wanting to be around the other person. That's mutual as well. Venus conjunct ascendant, Venus conjunct the descendant. Venus in the fourth house is really nice. So the Venus person brings a sense of comfort and good feelings to the fourth house person, and tries to improve the environment of the fourth house person. Like, depending on the sign, we'll want it to be Taurus, be cozy and comfortable and, feel harmonious. If it's Virgo, they might be a bit fastidious and a bit like clean freak energy, but they would keep the place very clean for the fourth house person in a couple. But they could also get tired of that if the other person doesn't help. See how the sign makes a difference because Venus is in fall in Virgo. If it's Venus in Cancer, they could give the other they could have a child with the other person, or they could be family to the other person or feel like family, that kind of energy. Anything in the fourth house feels very family, very familial, very familiar. People that have a lot of Cancerian placements or, nostalgic people tend to love the fourth house energy because it feels very comfortable, familiar, and soul level as well. Like it's deep as well. And sometimes it can be very emotional because the fourth house being ruled by the moon and Cancer, it can feel very emotional. So it can feel like you have very deep emotions for the other person, but maybe, you don't always know how to express it. Um, Venus in the fifth house is very nice. Venus in the seventh house is very nice as well. Or like Venus falling in someone's seventh or fifth. Venus falling in someone's first house can make them feel more beautiful. So like if someone's Venus fell into, my first house or on my ascendant, that person would make me somehow by the way that they are. And these things often you can't explain how it works. They just make you feel, they might give you a lot of like compliments and they might make you feel really good about yourself, physically or just in who you are. So that's a good one as well. Moon conjunct the ascendant. I see this a lot in married couples as well. And people that have a really strong connection to each other. Moon in the fourth house as well. It's a bit too emotional, but it feels very familiar. It feels very soul level. But familiarity is not always a good thing, but it depends. So if it's moon in Cancer, moon in Taurus, that can feel nice. That can feel very supportive. If it's moon in Scorpio, not so much. So again, the sign factors in. Sun in the first house can feel very upbeat and energetic, and like this person gives you vitality and positivity. Sun in the fifth house is similar. It's like a light-hearted energy, romantic. You feel more upbeat when you're around the person, more energized and happy, and like they lift your heart up. They give you good feelings, good vibes, and it just can feel quite lovely, quite wonderful. Okay, then I'm gonna look at the part of fortune, some key aspects. So the part of fortune conjunct the moon, the part of fortune conjunct Jupiter, the part of fortune conjunct Venus. These are all very positive, and the part of fortune conjunct any of the angles, midheaven, descendant point, ascendant, or IC. So any of those are really, really strong in lucky, especially part of fortune with Jupiter and part of fortune with Venus or the midheaven or the descendant. It shows a lucky, blessed relationship. Even part of fortune in the seventh house, lucky, blessed relationship when you come together with the other person. Part of fortune in the fifth house can be lucky for having kids, so, and especially if it's conjunct, say the part of fortune's conjunct Venus in the fifth house, you having a child with that person could feel very blessed, and you have an amazing child that you're just like, wow, look at our beautiful child. Like, you're very blessed by your child. I mean, all children are a blessing, but it can feel extra special in some way um, to the couple. Juno conjunct IC can show that you feel that this person, from the moment that you met them, you feel like they're your spouse. Even if you don't get married, you'll feel it on a spiritual level. Juno conjunct the midheaven, classic marriage indicator, or Juno conjunct part of fortune in the 10th house or in the 7th house. Juno conjunct Neptune as well, especially if in the 10th house. There might be a lot of dreaminess and a lot of hyper romance around the connection. Like they might have like a fairy tale wedding, or doesn't mean that the marriage itself is fairy tale. There might be a lot of illusions to overcome, but the marriage itself, like leading up to the marriage, could be very like magical time. And I can't remember if I think I did say Juno conjunct the ascendant or the descendant as well. Excuse me. Chiron, this is the last one that I'm going to mention. And like I said, this is not all of them, but how long have I been filming for? Lost track of time. Oh, don't know. It's been about at least 20 minutes, I feel. Chiron sextile sun is helpful because it shows that the other person, the way they are, like the sun person as an individual, feels healing to the Chiron person, and the sun person feels like they receive healing from the Chiron person. So I'll say that again. Chiron sextile sun, the sun person in their personality feels healing to the Chiron person, and the sun person feels like the Chiron person is healing them in some way. Interesting, very interesting one. Possibly similar with Chiron trine sun, but it might be a little bit more fraught with issues coming up. Chiron sextile moon, Chiron sextile or trine Venus or Mars. Again, with the trines, there could be some stuff that needs to come up to heal, but it'll be easy to heal once you sort of address it and talk about it and all that kind of stuff. So there's many more things, there's many more aspects that you could look at, but these are the ones, like I said, that over 20 plus years of studying astrology and relationship astrology are the ones that stood out to me. I'm sure I've missed some there. Can't possibly factor them all in. But if you have questions about any aspects to the green flags, as in positive and harmonious, please ask me, post below. If you'd like to book a reading, the links are in the description as well to my website. You can join me on Patreon where I add extra content, and follow me on Instagram if you're interested. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.